Zimbabwe's ruling party is set to begin impeachment proceedings against President Robert Mugabe. This comes a day after Mugabe stunned the nation by not announcing his resignation. His party originally gave him an ultimatum: resign or face impeachment. The deadline for his resignation has since passed. The military put Mugabe under house arrest last week in an apparent attempt to stop him from naming his wife as his successor. Mugabe's 37-year grip on power now appears to be nearing its end. Debora Patta has been covering this story and joins me now from Johannesburg. Hi, Debora. Mugabe surprised many when he decided not to announce his resignation as predicted. How was that received by the people of Zimbabwe?
Well, the words you used, Tanya, were the correct ones: stunned disbelief. But there was also a sense of, this is classic Robert Mugabe. We've been here so many times before, and he has clung on to power for so long. Why would anything be different this time? The entire nation gathered to watch the live address on television, where it really was expected that if he was going to speak to people with the military standing next to him, that he would resign. But he didn't. He rambled on for about 30 minutes and had no sense in his speech that the ground had shifted so dramatically underneath him in the past week since the military took control and has tried to intervene in this crisis. In fact, it's understood that the military even vetted a speech in which he said he would resign, but clearly that was not the one that was read out to the nation last night. So great disappointment across Zimbabwe. But I've just spoke to the former finance minister of Zimbabwe a short while ago, and he said to me, we've waited 37 years. If we have to wait a little bit longer, we will. But it's important that this is done correctly.
So it seems that he now faces impeachment proceedings. Is that correct? And how is this process likely to unfold?
Well, not only has he been asked to resign by the military, he's also been sacked as the leader of the ruling party, ZANU-PF. They had an extraordinary meeting yesterday, a very jubilant one, in which they said they were sacking him as their leader and expelling his wife, Grace Mugabe, permanently from the party. Again, Robert Mugabe appeared to think he was still in charge yesterday, but what they said to him: resign by noon on Monday, or else we will begin impeachment proceedings. Well, that deadline, as you pointed out, Tanya, has now passed, and they say that they will begin the impeachment proceedings tomorrow. But let's just take a little bit of a look at that, because that's not an easy process. Although people are saying, well, this can be completed in a day or two, they have the numbers. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the process. There is a legal process that has to take place. Two houses have to agree, a committee has to be appointed to investigate. Robert Mugabe has to obviously be given his rights to respond, and only then can the whole process be set in motion. So we're looking at another couple of weeks, I would think, before this could be finally set to rest.
And so looking forward, assuming he is eventually removed as president, what are the chances he'll face prosecution for all the corruption he's been accused of?
Well, I think there are a lot of people who would like to see that, but let's remember that he is 93 years old and in very poor health. We saw him appear at a university graduation on Friday in which he could barely stay awake throughout the ceremony. So it's unlikely that they would push charges. I think people in Zimbabwe will just be happy if he steps down. The big question, of course, will he be allowed to live in Zimbabwe? I think had he gone quietly and acceded to the demands for his resignation and not been so tone deaf to the demands of his own country, he perhaps would have had an easy time of it. Now he may well have to leave Zimbabwe in disgrace if he is impeached. But the charges, it's unlikely that those will be pressed. However, his wife, Grace Mugabe, could face charges still. Certainly there are a lot of people who want to see her go to prison, saying that she usurped power unconstitutionally and led her husband astray.
And so do we know who is likely to succeed Mugabe as president of Zimbabwe, now that it is very unlikely that his wife Grace will follow in his footsteps?
Well, in fact, Grace Mugabe was his ultimate undoing because he was pushing her as his successor. I think this was just a step too much for the ruling party, and that's why this particular intervention. The man who's being touted as his successor is a man called Emmerson Mnangagwa. Now, if you look at his record, he's not necessarily going to be all that different in some ways from Mugabe. He's also regarded as something of an autocrat. He presided over the Matabeleland massacres after independence, and he was head of the infamous intelligence agency which crushed opposition, suppressed all resistance to the state. He was also around during Robert Mugabe's 2008 and 2013 election campaigns, the first one widely regarded as not having been free and fair and perhaps stolen from the opposition MDC party. So this is a man who has a checkered career, but there is still a sense that anything is better than Robert Mugabe.
Debora Patta in Johannesburg, thank you.